introducing the lady, yeah.
Where would you like to do that from? Centre?
I'm going to do it from here.
Centre.
Yeah, just stand there. And then I'll go back there a bit to sit down.
No problem.
Okay.
Cheers.
Hello. Oh, I'm at the mic, am I? I thought my voice was loud enough.
Just to be sure.
Anyway, welcome to St Thomas's Church, Market Raisin, and those of you joining online. Okay, first of all, for those that don't know the church, if in the unlikely event of a fire, please make your way to the main door, and afterwards there is tea and coffee in the church room, and biscuits. Okay. This morning we're pleased to have with us the Reverend Diana Carroll, who will be reading pieces from her new book, Rooted in Love, Resources for Marriage and Partnership from Beginning to End. Sounds very interesting. Diana has gathered prayers, poems, blessings, songs, ceremonies and reflections from a wide range of contributors, among them a wife, the Reverend Dr. Sarah Lamming, who's a native Raisinite. Do you know, I never knew that was a Raisinite. That was the name for it. But anyway, this beautifully curated collection offers wisdom, honesty and hope for couples of all genders and at every stage of their relationship. For couples, ministers, celebrants, counsellors and communities, Rooted in Love is both a practical resource and a reminder that love is not a single moment, but a lifelong practice. Diana is a member of the Iona community, which she will say more about in her talk. She was ordained in the Episcopal Church in America in 2008 and served parishes in Philadelphia and Annapolis before moving to Lincolnshire in 2022. And you might have seen her occasionally scooping ice cream or making coffees at Wright's Ice Cream Parlour in North Willingham. Anyway, please join me in welcoming Diana to St Thomas's this morning.
Thank you so much, Jim, and thank you very much to the church for having me and to West Lindsay District Council for making this event a part of the Wolds WordFest. Before I talk about the book, I thought I would begin at the beginning with a poem called Beginnings. This marriage began long before the big day, in a quiet moment, as lips touched, as hands held, as minds matched and marveled, as hearts felt more and more at home. Like water that slowly gathers drop by drop in a marshy meadow, until suddenly it becomes a stream. Who can say where it truly began? Almost imperceptible, unnoticed at the time, two souls asked the question, and each answered, yes. It's a real joy to get to be here, and it's an especial joy because this date was planned some time ago, and we had no idea that this week would be the week the book actually came out. So it's a thrill to have a physical copy in my hands and not just notes, and physical copies at the back of the church for sale. I just might as well plug those up front. Let me say a little about how the book came to be before I read some more pieces. About 3 years ago, I was invited by Wild Goose Publications to put together a book of inclusive wedding resources. Now, it will help to know that Wild Goose is the publishing arm of the Iona community, which Jim mentioned in his welcome. The Iona community is a progressive, ecumenical Christian community working for justice, peace, and the integrity of creation. Sarah and I are members of the community, which is how my writing came to the attention of one of the editors at Wild Goose. And when he extended this invitation, of course, I jumped at the chance. But then I started to think more about it, and about how in our culture, when two people decide to make a commitment to each other, there is so much focus on the big day, on the wedding, on the ceremony. And sometimes people forget to think about the marriage or partnership and what it's all actually about. That can get a bit lost. So I asked Wild Goose, could I expand the book beyond just being about weddings, although there is a lot in there about weddings, to really encompass the whole life cycle of a relationship, before, during, and after the big day, the joys and challenges of life together, anniversaries, renewal, and even divorce, separation, and death. The whole cycle. Thankfully, they went with that idea. But why me? Why did they ask me in the first place, you might be wondering? Well, I am an Episcopal priest, and I have married many couples and prepared them for marriage. I've also been married for over 17 years to Sarah, but we couldn't always call it a marriage. In fact, because of the ways that the legal and religious landscape kept changing on both sides of the ocean, you'll hear that I'm American, she is English, we actually had 3 weddings. The first one was a civil partnership ceremony in the registrar's office in Lincoln. The second was a celebration and blessing of that civil partnership in Connecticut with family and friends, but no legal recognition and no church recognition. And then the third one was a legal marriage in a church in Maryland using the Episcopal prayer book. So I've spent a lot of time in my life thinking about the meaning of marriage, what makes for a successful partnership, and the different ways that a commitment of this kind can be celebrated and embodied. So the book draws a lot on my personal experience, and really a lot on the personal experiences of all the contributors, because over 40 people contributed pieces to this book, representing a wide range of perspectives and voices. The pieces that I am going to share today are some of the ones I've written myself, along with a few of Sarah's pieces, which, now she recorded them ahead of time, but unfortunately the sound, we didn't do fancy enough things to make it work to hear her reading them. So I'll read hers as well. As we write about in the book, and as I'll share more about later, Sarah lives with multiple chronic conditions that severely limit her activities. And although she wanted to be here physically in the church, she is joining us on the live stream today. The book follows a flow that I'm going to more or less follow in order this morning. It's got 4 main sections. The first is preparations, so getting ready, deciding whether to get engaged, planning the wedding, preparing for marriage. And then the big day, which is the main section. Life together, which has a lot of different pieces to it. Everyday things, big difficult things, transitions, and anniversaries and renewal. And then the final section on endings. Just a couple more things I want to say before I get to reading. When they asked me to make a book that was inclusive, a lot of the inspiration was to include couples who are not heterosexual. So couples of all genders is how I've phrased it. And so how did I do that? Well, the pieces, I really focused on using a lot of gender-neutral language, but also giving lots of alternatives. So there will be a prayer that says something about spouse, and there'll be a little asterisk, and then it'll say, or partner, lover, husband, wife, beloved, etc. Basically, change the language to match your situation, your relationship, and how you identify yourself. So that's a big part of it. I'm also really aware that there are a lot of partners who cannot or choose not to be legally or religiously married, which is why the word partnership shows up so much of the time. It's right in the title, resources for marriage and partnership from beginning to end. There's other aspects of inclusivity, of course, so I've also tried to be attentive to physical difference, neurodiversity, and the ways that we describe God, or the divine, or spirit, which is also very personal, and there's encouragement for people to adapt those to match what resonates with them as well. A lot of what I wrote was practical advice for planning a wedding, as well as pieces to introduce and frame all the sections, but I am not reading any of those today. But if you or someone you know is in fact thinking about planning a wedding, please know that this book is first and foremost a really good resource for doing that. But there's also so much more about navigating life together. Okay, last thing is the title. Why did I call it Rooted in Love? What does that mean? Well, again, we can have this idealized notion that two people have to sort of survive and succeed in their marriage or partnership on their own. And nothing could be farther from the truth. Because a strong marriage or partnership needs to be rooted in something larger than the partners involved. It needs to be rooted in the love of their families, friends, community, and the divine. So the cover image is a tree, because as you may know, trees actually connect with each other beneath the soil. They communicate through the microorganisms and fungi. They're connected with a whole web of resources and support. And that's how I picture being rooted in love. A relationship that is held and supported by a vast network of other relationships, and above all, by the sacred love that some of us call God. So, let's read some pieces. I began with the poem that opens the preparation section, Beginnings, and as I said, there's plenty in that section about engagement and wedding planning and preparing for life together. And then it moves to The Big Day, which has so much in it. Readings, vows, ritual actions. Sure, there's an exchange of rings, but there's other creative actions people can take. There's a hand-fasting ceremony. There's blessings and prayers. There's even songs. Because there are not many good wedding hymns out there. I'm seeing a fellow clergy person shaking her head. The hymnals just don't have much for weddings. So I was really pleased to put some fresh options for wedding hymns into this book. And I received so many of these submissions from people that I didn't feel I needed to write that much for this section myself. But I got interested in thinking about those parts of the big day that don't normally get much attention, or at least that don't often have prayers written about them. Which led me to write this piece, Blessing for the Wedding Night. The day is done. This big day. This day you have looked forward to and planned for and worked towards for so long. This day which marked the end of one journey and the beginning of another. Whether it all went perfectly to plan or was full of disasters and drama, it is over. The vows have been said, the party has ended, the guests are gone. And now, after all of it, is what it was all about. The two of you, alone, together. Whether you have shared a bed many times or never before. Whether you will sleep in your own home or an unfamiliar place. Whether you are eager for intimacy or too exhausted even to contemplate making love, may this night, your first night together as a married couple, be blessed with sacred love, with connection, and with rest. Be tender with one another. The day has been full of emotion. The night may be as well. Hold each other gently. Ask what your beloved needs. Release expectations, yours and those placed on you by others. Assume nothing. Begin now, if you have not already, to practice communication and consent, honoring your beloved exactly where they are, as you also wish to be honored. For you are each worthy of honor, you beautiful, holy, embodied beings, encompassing the joy and anguish of this earthly life, willing to share it all with each other in vulnerability, in hope. Tonight, may you savor each touch, each word, each shared laugh at some remembered moment from the day. May you glow with the fire of love for one another, fed by the love that has wrapped itself around you and through you and between you. May you relax into the embrace of that love. May it hold you as you sleep. And in the morning, when you wake in the presence of your beloved, may each of you know pure joy as you delight in the one with whom you have chosen to share your life. Whether you are off on your honeymoon or returning to your everyday lives, may the memories of this day and this night carry you and sustain you for many nights and days to come. One of the lovely things that happened while I was working on the book is that Sarah felt inspired to start writing her own pieces to contribute. She started by writing a series of prayers for couples that focused on the everyday challenges and delights of life together. She also wrote some pieces that I won't have time to include today about her experiences in ministry and what love is, the different forms it takes. Just are some really powerful pieces. But I'll just do a few of my favorites of her short prayers. Quite a lot of the pieces she and I wound up writing had to do with arguments and conflict, which wasn't really intentional, but that's a big part of life together, is navigating differences. So the first prayer of hers I'm going to read is for that kind of time, and it's called Rough Times. Loving God, in this moment of struggle and misunderstanding, we seek your presence. Grant us patience and compassion with each other. Help us to communicate with kindness, find grace in our imperfections, and inspire each other to be our best. Guide our hearts towards healing and unity, so that your peace may fill our home and we may grow together in your love. Amen. Here's another of Sarah's prayers, which is about a situation I'm sure we're all familiar with. Holiday with family at Christmas or another season. Loving God, help us survive this seasonal gathering. May our love for each other deepen and thrive as we navigate family dynamics, set boundaries, and honor one another's needs. Grant us moments of quiet togetherness amidst the chaos and busyness of sharing joyful traditions. Strengthen all of our relationships and enable us to create memories to treasure in the years to come. Amen. I'll read one more of hers a bit later as well. So marriages and partnerships, of course, change over time. They don't stay the same because we don't stay the same. Our circumstances don't stay the same. And I already mentioned that, in a sense, a lot of the book is about the transition into a marriage, and the section on divorce and separation is the transition out of a marriage. But transitions can also happen in the middle, and do. One of those, for many people, is the experience of becoming parents together. So from this section, I chose to read this blessing that I wrote. It's for partners to say to each other when they become parents. And I imagine using it sort of in private right away, maybe in the hospital or wherever this might have occurred. But of course, it could also be said in a public gathering with friends and family. And as with everything else, names and titles like father and husband should, of course, be changed as appropriate. But I'll read it the way I put it in the book. My beloved, I bless the day that we began to create a family together. And now, our child is here, the child of our love, and we are changed because of it. You are now not only my husband, you are a father, the father of our child. As you learn to inhabit your new role, I pray that God will bless you with everything you need, with strength, resilience, courage, creativity, and joy. Thank you for going on this adventure of parenthood with me. I know that everything will be different now. Our home, our habits, our hopes. But my love for you and for our child will remain constant, and I trust that God's love will continue to enfold us all. This next piece is the longest one I'm going to read today. It's one of my essays or personal reflections. And in some ways, it's also the most vulnerable piece I'm going to read today, because it's about the very big disruption that Sarah and I have experienced over the past few years. The section on disruption and devastation that I put in here, which I thought was really important to include, I could have put a lot of things in there, but in the end, most of those pieces focus on the experience of miscarriage or infant death and the experience of illness and disability. So this piece, and do bear with me, it'll take sort of about 10, 12 minutes. So homily length, sermon length, okay, but it's the longest one, and then I'll do more short ones. It's called From I'm Sorry to Thank You, Partnership and Disability. It will happen at some point in almost every partnership. One or both people will experience an injury or illness that limits their physical, emotional, and/or cognitive abilities, either temporarily or permanently. Perhaps one of you breaks a finger while sledding, and suddenly the balance of housework has to shift while the break heals. Perhaps one of you undergoes surgery that causes unexpected complications, and you have to take unpaid leave from work. Perhaps a seemingly ordinary infection never quite gets better, and the tests reveal a chronic condition that will cause permanent, lifelong disability. If you are blessed to live together into old age, there will almost certainly be joint replacements and cataracts, a general lessening of energy and clarity, and the unwelcome arrival of life-limiting and even life-threatening illnesses. Eventually, one or both of you will very likely get cancer, or heart disease, or dementia, or have a stroke. When this happens, much care and attention will be given to medical treatments, complementary therapies, and lifestyle changes, all centered on the healing and wholeness of the individual who is unwell. There is usually much less focus on the healthier partner, who may find themselves shouldering unexpected burdens and entering into a caregiving role for the person they have seen as their equal partner up to that point. Weeks or months or even years may pass before anyone thinks about the impact these changes are having on the partnership itself. How will you face these challenges together whenever and however they come? How will you adapt to changes in your roles, your incomes, your ability to do things, both together and apart? What practical systems can you put in place to ease the challenges? Long-term care insurance, powers of attorney, a rainy day fund, advanced decisions or directives concerning medical care. Who makes up your support networks? Where can you turn when you need to grieve, cry, rant, or simply do something ordinary that is totally unrelated to the situation that has derailed your life? While it's important to have a healthy level of self-differentiation in any relationship, the language of two becoming one really is true in a long-term committed partnership. It is true spiritually and emotionally as much as it is physically. What impacts one person impacts the other. When my wife Sarah was in her late 30s and early 40s, she went through a series of health challenges, culminating in a relapse of severe ME/CFS that left her unable to work or care for herself. Our whole life was turned upside down. Eventually, we both left our jobs and moved across an ocean here to be near her family. We lost so much at that time: our careers, our identities, our home, the local networks we had built over the course of a decade. And we also lost our dreams, our plans, our hopes for what our future together would be like. We had to begin all over again. Our hearts had not changed, but our circumstances had. It was not only Sarah who had to accept new limitations on her abilities. In the years leading up to the move, I went through deep depression, paralyzing anxiety, spiritual crisis, and ultimately burnout that left me, too, disabled in its own way. I came to our new home thinking I would take a few weeks to get over jet lag and then start looking for a part-time job. But it turned out I had arrived running on less than empty. Once I finally stopped, that was all I could do: stop. I cared for Sarah. I helped around the house as much as I could. I tended my father-in-law's garden. I did yoga. I looked at the movements of the sun and the moon and the stars. I read books. I rested. It was a privileged thing, I know, to be able to stop in this way. I have dear friends and loved ones who have simply had to force their way onward through disability, through burnout, through the deaths of family members with no option to press pause. It's not necessarily an approach I would recommend to everyone, I paid a high price. We both did. At the time, though, I knew it was the right path for me. I needed a fallow season. I needed winter at the height of summer. I needed to find my footing again after the earth had tilted and the foundations of my life had been torn out from under me, exposing an empty void underneath where the bedrock used to be. What about the impact on our relationship, our partnership? Oh dear. I am a recovering perfectionist. I can be very controlling. I want what's best for everyone, and I tend to think I know what that is in every circumstance. I have struggled endlessly to find the line between supporting Sarah and smothering her. Sometimes I have blamed her for worsening symptoms or a crash that seemed avoidable to me. Sometimes I get very angry at the situation, and because you can't really be angry at an illness, it spills over into anger at her. I've asked her forgiveness for these patterns again and again. We've worked to find healthier ways to deal with the stress, the anxiety, the uncertainty of it all. Sarah used to say, "I'm sorry," whenever she was in excruciating pain. For a long time, I would answer, "It's okay." But it wasn't okay. Nothing about the situation was okay. So then I began to respond simply, "I love you." Sometimes I would tell her to stop apologizing because the pain was not her fault. But she wanted a way to acknowledge the impact it was having on me. And I was grateful for that. We tried to come up with other phrases besides that very, very English, "I'm sorry," to get that message across. Finally, I realized that what I wanted to hear most in those moments was thank you. Thank you for caring for me. Thank you for getting me those meds. Thank you for suggesting an adjustment that has helped. We practiced, and the change in words made a difference. I didn't want her to make herself feel even worse by adding a sense of guilt for the toll that caregiving was taking on me. Yet I did want her to acknowledge that toll. Gratitude helped us reframe the situation. Sarah is a fiercely independent person by nature. She hates having to depend on me and on other people for so much. She also hates being stuck at home. She loves to travel on her own, to explore new places, to have time and space to think and be. We've worked hard to make our new house a true haven for both of us, but especially for her, because it is where she spends almost all of her time. One of the side effects of this is that I am almost never home by myself. It turns out that even as an extrovert, this is something I need from time to time. So we've begun to plan times when she can go over to a family member's house, even for a few hours, not so I can do any particular activity on my own, but simply so I can have the space to myself for a while. There are things we used to love to do together, which are either impossible now or require very careful planning. Going out to dinner is a monumental undertaking. Having people over for a meal is a rare and delightful occasion, and it is only ever a few guests at a time. We don't host parties anymore. Taking a walk has become taking a stroll or roll with Sarah in her electric wheelchair and me walking along beside. We seldom go far. Swimming and kayaking are not even options. Long-distance travel is possible, but rarely seems worth the effort or the repercussions. We would love to take a vacation somewhere together, just the two of us. Yet the thought of the logistics involved, the energy required from both of us simply to get to a holiday cottage with all the things we would need, means we have yet to make any serious plans. From the outside, people see me as the caregiver in our relationship. And it's true, I do a lot of practical caring, and a lot of the household stuff, and a lot of driving, and logistics, and accompanying to appointments. But Sarah also cares for me in ways people don't necessarily see. My own severe health issues with depression and anxiety were occurring long before she became disabled. They had a substantial impact on her, just as her health did on me. She did a lot of emotional caregiving, trying to hold things together even when her own health was deteriorating. Both of us are doing so much better than we were a few years ago. We've each been able to taper off some medications that got us through the worst times. Our quality of life has improved. I'm working again, a part-time position that has nothing to do with my former career. I rarely experience the kind of depression and anxiety that used to be a constant state for me. Yet, Sarah still carries more of the emotional and mental load. When I am struggling, I sometimes say to her, "I'm sorry." Maybe I need to remember to say thank you more often instead. I was going to move to talking about anniversaries, but it feels like a hard shift to go back to the joyful after reading that. Although I think it's just important to say there is so much joy for us still in our lives, and finding the joy is so important. And marking anniversaries and other milestones remains really important, even if we aren't doing it in the same way we used to. So I'll do the prayer that I wrote for an anniversary. There's some wonderful services for renewals of vows and even one for coming back together after a time of separation that's really quite powerful. But there's also an anniversary prayer. Now, I was going to ask if anyone has recently celebrated an anniversary or has one coming up. Yes? Oh, yes? Okay. May I do this prayer for you and the other person?
Sorry? Can't I have a sacred prayer from you and Alison? Yeah. Okay.
Tell me your name, I'm sorry. David and Allison. Absolutely, right. And how many years is it? Or will it be? Oh no, I've quizzed him. 62nd. Marvelous. Absolutely. Well, let's offer this prayer then for David and Allison. Holy God, whose love endures forever, we give thanks for the marriage of David and Allison and the many ways that your love is made tangible in their love for one another. As they celebrate their 62nd anniversary, we ask you to bless them with joy in the memories of what has been and hope for all that is yet to be. May their life together be rich and full, and may their love grow deeper as the years increase. Amen. I've just got a few more pieces to read before I'll take any questions or responses anyone might have. This is going to sound strange, but when I was putting the book together, the section I actually was most excited about was the one on divorce. Now, that is because churches are very good at celebrating the beginnings of marriages, and they offer nothing to recognize the endings. And this is something that people really need in different ways. So I didn't write any pieces for the divorce section myself, and so I'm not actually going to read from it today. And that's partly because it's not an experience I had, and I really wanted to invite in people who could speak from their own experience. But there's some very powerful ceremonies that people have created, some that envision the two partners being able to do the ceremony together, to take off their rings, give them back, release each other from their vows, which the person who wrote that actually says, maybe this is just an idealized version. There'd be very few couples who could do that, but it's there. And then there are others that are for just one person who is going through a divorce or separation, to either in a more public way or a more private way have that acknowledged and recognized and receive the support of community through that. So it was really important to me to include that section, and there's some really good stuff. And then it would have seemed awfully strange not to also include some pieces about the death of a partner or a spouse. There are a lot of great bereavement resources out there, and I didn't want to duplicate what already exists. In fact, Wild Goose Publications has an amazing book called Saying Goodbye that is just full of really good resources. So I chose a selection of pieces, quite a few of which I wrote myself, some Sarah wrote, some from others, that were just talking about some specific aspects of losing a spouse or partner. Okay, so I haven't been through that experience either, but I've been closer to it in a way and could draw inspiration from experiences of those around me. So I'm just going to share two of these ones. And the first is one of Sarah's. She said this is her favorite piece in the book, and it's actually about losing someone through dementia. A short prayer for the long goodbye. Loving presence, surround us on this journey, where memories fade, but our love remains. Grant patience when words and actions are lost, and strength and solace when grief feels overwhelming. In moments of sorrow, bring comfort. In moments of joy, help us to linger. May we cherish each touch, each glance, each activity shared, trusting that love endures beyond the fading memories. Amen. The other piece I want to read is a prayer for an anniversary after death. When I was putting this together, an older woman who was widowed said, "You know, the strange thing after my husband died was I never heard our names spoken together anymore." And I thought, I'm going to write a prayer where their names are still spoken together. And I've done two versions, one for when one partner has died and one for both are gone, but loved ones may wish to remember them on their anniversary. And I'm going to dedicate this one to my grandparents, Bill, who is no longer with us, and Catherine, who just turned 98, I think. They would have been married 77 years on June 15th. And I'm going to pray this one for them. But I am sure many of you can think of others for whom this prayer would be significant. Holy and beloved one, wellspring of life and fire of love, we thank you today for the marriage of Bill and Catherine, for the years they lived together on earth, the home they shared, the children they raised, and the many ways that your love was embodied and expressed in their love for one another. On this, the anniversary of their wedding, we remember with tenderness your beloved child Bill, who has left this life to journey onward with you. And we pray for Catherine as she holds in her heart all of the joys and sorrows, memories and longings that arise for her this day. Continue to bless Catherine in this time when the veil of death separates her from Bill in body, though not in spirit, and sustain her until that day when they are reunited in your eternal embrace. O lover of souls, we entrust all our griefs and hopes to you. Amen. Now, I really didn't want to end with grief, even though that's where the book ends. I wanted to bring us back to the beginning again. Because for all of the ups and downs of being in a committed, loving partnership, as I said, there is so much joy. And it can be helpful sometimes to remind ourselves of that spark at the very beginning that inspired us to even enter into this partnership in the first place. So I'm going to read an engagement poem to end us today. And it's specifically about my engagement with Sarah. There's a couple challenging things in there as well, but I wanted to be reminded of that sparkle of joy. So this poem is called I Choose You. Champagne in your suitcase, crickets singing on a summer night, stars like fireflies, a spontaneous stroll through the soft, warm air, through the deserted grounds of the place we first met. You came all this way so we could ask each other the question, to which the answer has long been decided. Impatient and full of the beauty of the night, we can't even wait till the next day is planned. We slip into the chapel, hold hands in the dark. This is where it began. This is where it will continue, where we will proclaim our love, no longer hidden or hinted at. It will be nearly 2 years before that day comes. I will worship in this place, missing you, often in tears, planning how to arrange the chairs, where the altar will go, which way we will walk in, imagining it all again and again. And you, far away, will do what must be done. Complete your training, fulfill your obligations, toe the line. Not wear this ring on the obvious finger, not raise suspicion, not say the word fiancé, not describe our relationship at all, even when I visit. Let them assume we are friends. Let them draw their own conclusions. You will carry on, knowing that you plan to leave, knowing the church there will not be home for us. But tonight, all this is still in the future as we ask and answer, as we kiss softly in the darkness, as hearts dance with disbelief. Are we really doing this? Are we really getting engaged? Tomorrow there will be champagne on the beach and floating in salt water, hand in hand, letting the waves lift us and lower us as one. Our friends will come to celebrate. The day marred only by the angry phone call from a relative I love. What will you do when society decides this relationship isn't acceptable anymore? Then a dial tone, a punch to the gut, a wound that will take many years to heal. I choose you, my beloved. I choose you tonight. I will choose you tomorrow and every day that follows. When we have to hide or be careful, when we march proudly in rainbow array, when there are places we are not welcome, when the laws change, when the church doesn't. For tonight, we are safe in the sparkling bubble of our love, fizzing and floating with anticipation, with joy. Thank you. I've tried to leave a few minutes at the end if anybody has any questions or responses, something that spoke to you or something you're wondering about. I've been asked, am I planning another? This is my first book, and I very much hope it will not be my last. But let me tell you, the very next one will not be another compilation. It's an incredible tapestry, but the work of collecting and sorting through and editing each individual piece to make it work and then deciding where they all went in the book. I had a wall of sticky notes above my desk for months with all the sections and notes about where they felt there were gaps and how we could. It was a lot. There's a reason it took almost 3 years. And so, as amazing as it is, I think I'll give myself a break from that kind of work for now. Although I have to say, I loved doing it. I loved the editing as well as the writing my own pieces. And I'm grateful. I have to give a shout out to Neil Painter, who's the editor at Wild Goose Publications, who took a chance on me as a first-time author and first-time editor and gave me the opportunity to do this. And I really did love the work. The stressful part was making sure I had enough time to do the work. That was the hard part. I mean, I was busy being married and doing all the other things I've talked about. So I hope it won't be the last. But I think the next one will either focus just on my writing, or maybe Sarah and I will do something together, the two of us. So watch this space.
Your piece that you read about being differently abled really spoke to me. My partner is 19 years younger than me, and as I get older, my health is not what I'd like it to be. And I am the caregiver in our relationship. He's useless. And slowly, we're going to have to adjust a bit. There are some things I just can't do anymore. We had a discussion about cleaning the cooker last night. Because he can see it's dirty. I can't, my hands will not do what needs to be done now. Just, it really spoke to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I know that won't necessarily have picked up on the recording. I don't want to repeat the whole thing, but just sharing that piece about different abilities spoke to her and the ways that will have to get navigated going forward. Yeah. Anybody else?
The thing that struck me about the book is, having been brought up in the church, how little we talk about intimacy and the things that make happen every day. So what stood out for me in the book was the permission, and I'm very mindful of some, and even if you're not of a church type, in this Psalm 139, it basically says God's thought of everything before we've even thought of it ourselves. And it just made me think about what that meant, because there are just so many intimacies that we hide away. I think I've hidden away, so I'll take some ownership of it. So one of the things the book did for me was to give me permission to talk about things that we didn't talk about.
Thank you, Marie. And I will just repeat a little bit of that to be sure everyone could hear that part of what really struck her was the way in which the book talks about intimacy and different kinds of intimacies, which is not something we tend to talk about in the church, or indeed, I'll just say, in polite society.
We don't do it in our culture.
In our culture, this Western culture. But I'll tell a quick funny story, right? So I was meeting with our Iona community family group, and I was telling them about the book and asking, what they thought should be in it. And one person said, well, I hope there's going to be sex in this book. And another one said, a blessing for an orgasm. And then someone said, does anyone want more tea? But it inspired me. There is one. There is a blessing for an orgasm in here, and a blessing for intimacy. I read the wedding night one because that's the gentlest for this particular space. I didn't want to shock any sensibilities too much. But also there's advice pieces from someone who's been a marriage counselor and coach for decades that also talks about the challenges of intimacy and life together. So it was really important to me that was in there, and that it was also acknowledged not simply with advice, but also with blessings and prayers. Well, thank you again for coming, all of you. I want to say a special thank you to Nina and Alex for running the live stream. And hello again to any crazy person who got up at 5 a.m. on the East Coast of the US to join, but also those who will hopefully watch later at a more reasonable time. I want to thank Jim and Anne for making sure we have tea and coffee in the church room. I want to thank my mother-in-law, Sheila, who's by the books at the back, and the church, again, for being willing to have me share from my work in this sacred space. And West Lindsay District Council for putting together WordFest so we can celebrate words and stories and all that they mean to us in our own community. I'll hang around and be available for some conversation afterwards. I'm happy to sign books. I brought my good pen if you want me to. But mainly, I'm just really grateful that you've been here today. And may your life, each of you, whatever shape it takes, always be rooted in love. Thank you very much.
Don't forget, there's refreshments.